Hi, folks. So this PowerPoint and discussion is about Lev Vygotsky and his contributions to sociocultural theory. So Lev Vygotsky, by the way, was Russian. He died at a relatively young age, and it's only recently, in the last 20 years or so, that his works have been translated, and it's really informed educational theory and psychology. He was a contemporary of Piaget, but of course they didn't know one another as they were in different countries. One of Vygotsky's most famous books is Mind and Society. And here's a quote from that. Learning is a necessary and universal aspect of the process of developing culturally organized, specifically human psychological function. So, in short, that means that Vygotsky theorized that social learning tends to come from development. Okay, Piaget thought that children's development preceded learning. So this is a different take on how this works. Other differences between Piaget and Vygotsky. Vygotsky emphasized the culture, how culture affects cognitive development. Piaget looked at it as views of universal stages and content of development. And so it's sort of the nature versus nurture kind of argument we might be able to apply here, that Piaget saw these stages as sort of universal and set. Vygotsky saw the cognitive development, as being affected by the surroundings and environment and the culture in which a person lives. Vygotsky had more emphasis on social factors contributing to cognitive development. So the person in society, what kind of society is impacting that person. Piaget underestimated this. Vygotsky also emphasized the role of language in cognitive development, and Piaget underestimated this as well. And we'll look at a little bit more of those three factors as we move on. Social influences on cognitive development. So Vygotsky very much believed that learning occurs through social interaction with a more knowledgeable other. So learning is social, but one doesn't learn on one's own necessarily, although one can. But when there's social interaction with a more expert other or a more knowledgeable other, learning takes place. The MKO, which is the abbreviation for more knowledgeable other, may model behaviors and or provide verbal instructions that can be cooperative or collaborative dialogue. And so you can see how a teacher fits into here, model behaviors and provide verbal instructions. A learner seeks to understand and then internalizes the information using it to guide performance. The more knowledgeable other would be someone who has a better understanding or higher ability level than the learner. Now, it could be a teacher, but it could also be a parent or an older adult, but it could also be a peer, or it could be an electronic tutor. And that sounds kind of silly, but these days there are many computer programs that are designed to be that more knowledgeable other, to assist students in learning. So it's not necessarily just a teacher in front of the classroom. It could be any of these things. One of the most important contributions to educational psychology that Lev Vygotsky gave us is the zone of proximal development. The zone of proximal development is a concept that relates to the difference between what a learner can achieve independently and what a learner can achieve with guidance and encouragement from a more knowledgeable other. So it's this zone of learning where when a student is learning a concept or a skill with the guidance of somebody to the point where he or she can do that independently. The ZAD is the zone of actual development. This is where a learner can achieve independently without somebody helping them. One of the most fatal mistakes we make in schools is that we give students work to do in their ZAD. It's something they can already do, yet we ask them to do it many times over in the name of practice. Well, practice is good, but if a person is proficient at something, then there needs to be moved to the next level of that particular skill or concept. So if you're asking someone to write an essay that they can already write, you need to move them to the next level of writing, where you now are giving them guidance and support to get to that higher level. And that's where the ZPD, and that's where learning occurs. And here are four ways to help you think about it. So I do and you watch. I do, you help. You do, I help. You do, I watch. In another class, I used the example of my father teaching me how to change the oil in my car when I was a teenager. So I'll use that example here because it's one I know well. So as a teenager, my dad insisted that I learn how to change the oil in my car. I wasn't going to drive until I learned how to do that. Change a tire as well. But I'm going to talk about, using my ZPD to help me learn to change the oil. So he pulled me out in the garage and said, okay, I'm going to show you how to do this and you watch. And I did several times. Watched him. He went through the steps, explained them to me. I asked a ton of questions. He answered them. We did it several times, and it wasn't all in one day either. I watched him 2 or 3 times before he'd let me help. And then he would still do the task, but he asked me to help him, and he would give me certain jobs along the way to do, and would help me and talk me through it. If I did it wrong, he would show me how. So I was helping, but he was the primary doer. And then there came a time when he decided that, all right, so now I'm going to let you be the primary doer, and I'm going to help you. And so I initiated the task, and he helped me. If I made a mistake, he stopped me, corrected me, showed me how to do it correctly, gave me more information. We might have had to go back and forth several times on this you do, I help. Okay? And eventually, the idea is that you want to make sure that the learner can do it by him or herself. This is the gradual release of responsibility, beginning with watching someone do something, helping them do it, having them help you, and then eventually you doing it and having them watch you. So eventually the day came, my dad said, okay, here you go, you do it. And I did, and he watched. It wasn't successful. We had to go back to another step. You do, I help. So it's a very recursive kind of a pattern. It's not lockstep. It doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4. It might go 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 2, 1, 4, 1, 2, but it's that cycle. And so eventually, after going back to the you do, I help a couple times, eventually I could do it. I had reached my ZAD in terms of learning to change the oil in my car, and my dad had practiced the gradual release of responsibility. And if we keep this in mind as we work with learners in our classrooms, or with anyone that we're helping to learn to do a task, the learning will be much more efficient. Okay, another concept that Vygotsky really had contributed to educational psychology is the idea of private speech. And its use in development of language. So private speech is when people talk aloud to themselves. And we know people who do this. We know that children are very good at this. They talk to themselves all the time. There are 3 different kinds of private speech that Vygotsky outlined. Self-guidance. These are remarks about one's own activity that are public but not directed to anyone else in particular. How many times have you been completing a task and spoke something out loud, not directing it to anybody in particular, but just speaking it out loud? Maybe you've done something really well, and you go, "Yes, I did it." It's you're speaking it out loud, but not to anyone in particular. Children do this a lot. They talk the way through things sometimes. Reading aloud. This might be sounding out words, formulating ideas, but just reading aloud. And then inaudible mutterings. These are those quiet remarks that one may make but are not heard by others. And children do this as well. They kind of underneath their breath, but that private speech and the idea of verbalizing that private speech is helping them to learn language. It's a means for children to plan activities and strategies, and it therefore aids in their development. Language is an accelerator to thinking and understanding, and it develops from social interactions. Later, language becomes internalized as thought, and then it becomes inner speech. So if we look how this progresses, thought then is the result of language. We speak, private speech becomes inner speech, becomes thought. Vygotsky also believes strongly in the role of play to development. Imaginative play is crucial to development. One of the things, the big debates today is the push for young children to learn in academic ways rather than through play, and this is causing quite a dust-up among child psychologists, and rightly so. We know that play is important for children. When we take away their play in the form of recess or even playing to learn, we're doing our children a disservice. But when a child is at play, he or she is in constant dialogue with self or others. And children at play are making sense of the world through their inner speech by talking out loud to themselves. If we take away that um, ability or that activity to have those dialogues with self and others through play, we're interrupting um, the development of language. So discovering language via play is essential. Vygotsky also emphasized the importance of peers or mentors. And as I mentioned before, it could be a teacher, it could be, a teacher as a guide, where a teacher structures learning activities, provides instructions, offers guidance, and so forth and so on. Okay, this is the Vygotsky method of direct teaching, where the teacher is a guide, but structures the learning activity. Okay, so it's not the teacher just doing information dump to a student, but facilitating a learning activity with guidance that's staying ahead of a student's existing competencies, working in that ZPD, and always gradually releasing responsibility. And so it keeps going in a trajectory of, as a student learns a particular skill or concept, introducing another particular skill or concept, and continually learning. Peers can be guides as well. Two heads are better than one. Peers working cooperatively can accomplish a great deal. And then also culture as guides. Knowledge and skill can be viewed within a specific cultural context. And so we learn a lot from our culture, our society in which we live. The book gives you an example of a Native American letter about the context of learning what one needs to learn within a specific cultural context. All of this gives a new view of motivation, and it gives us a middle ground between a totally student-centered and a totally teacher-centered atmosphere. This is learning-centered. This is where scaffolding and guidance controls the frustration that one feels when one's trying to learn when you're out of your ZPD, when you don't have the background knowledge, the schema, the support, and the guidance to complete a task. Frustration ensues. And so this mitigates that. Because the scaffolding and guidance controls that. There's enough work going on to build capacity for learning where frustration does not occur. And when this happens, students become curious, they're more apt to persevere, they can become more committed, and they're more apt to set goals for themselves. And so this idea of a teacher as a guide and a mentor, always scaffolding and helping students to learn, is this learning-centered philosophy. Learning requires sparking positive motivations and emotions, but it also controls for the negative ones by guided assistance and gradual release of responsibility. And here are my references. And so that's it, folks. I just wanted to give you a little overview. Your book gives you much more information, and in the lengthy PowerPoint that I didn't narrate also gives you some more information. So that's it. Have a great day.